Chapter 1. You wicked woman. How could a mother be so heartless? How could you do this to your own son? A burning pain spread across my face. My husband, David, stood before me, his eyes blazing with rage, while behind him, our son lay in the grass, covered in blood. That's when it hit me. I had been reborn. In my previous life, my 6-year-old son had jumped from the 8th floor while I was napping. Before I even had a chance to grieve, my in-laws and husband stormed in, accusing me of driving him to his end. In front of everyone, they stripped me of my dignity and my clothes. They beat me to a pulp, spitting curses at me as they rained down blows. You slut! Sleeping with another man in front of your own child? You deserve every bit of this. James was only 6 years old. How could you abuse him like this? Look at his body, covered in bruises. Who knows what kind of hell you put him through before he passed away? Scum like you deserves to be torn apart and thrown into hell. I tried to explain, to defend myself, but my voice was drowned out by their fists and the crowd's jeers. People gathered, watching with morbid curiosity. They saw the small, lifeless body of my son, and with just a few words from my in-laws, the mob turned on me. No one came to my defense. Instead, they cheered. Some even pulled out their phones to livestream my torment. I wanted to see my son one last time, but they dragged me away, beating me until my legs were shattered, before throwing me out of our home. The story made the news. Everywhere I went, strangers would spit on me, calling me every name in the book. I had become a pariah, a rat scurrying from one shadow to the next, begging just to survive. Until one day, while begging on the streets, I saw something that shattered what little was left of me. There was James, alive, sitting at a restaurant with my husband David and another woman. They looked so happy, like a perfect family. James called her mom. I rushed toward them, desperate for answers, but David shoved me to the ground. He dumped the scraps from their dog's bowl into mine and sneered, "Thanks for stepping aside." I tried to demand justice, but before I could, a vicious dog belonging to the woman ripped out my throat. The memory of it all sent a wave of fury surging through me, threatening to explode. "You witch! Say something! You owe me my son's life." David's voice snapped me back to the present. He stormed toward me, ready to strike again, but this time I was ready. I dodged him with ease. In my previous life, grief and guilt had clouded my mind the moment I saw my son's body. I let David and his family manipulate me, let them brand me as a cheating, abusive monster. I had been too weak to fight back. But not this time. This time, I would not let these demons win. I rushed to James's side, throwing myself over his body, sobbing hysterically. "My dear, what am I supposed to do without you?" I played the role of the devastated mother perfectly, my voice wild with grief. "He's not gone. There's still time. I know CPR. I can save him." I began performing CPR, pressing down on his chest with frantic urgency, my lips moving as if I were breathing life back into him. David grabbed me by the arm, yanking me away. "What are you doing? You'll break his ribs. Are you trying to hurt him even more?" I looked at him, confused, my voice trembling. "Didn't you say he was already gone? How could someone who's no longer here feel pain if their ribs break?" A flicker of something crossed David's face. Guilt, maybe? But he quickly buried it under another wave of anger. "You've been abusing him behind my back, haven't you? Hurting him when I'm not around, and now you've driven him to his end. And after everything, you're pretending to care? You're a monster." Chapter 2. The crowd had started to gather, whispering and pointing at me. I acted fast, grabbing a sharp stone from the ground and pressing it against my throat, my voice breaking into a desperate, tear-filled shout. "My son just fell to his end, and instead of helping him, you're accusing me? David, what kind of sick game are you playing? You've emptied my bank account, stolen everything from me, and now you're trying to frame me? Even if I perish right here, I won't let you get away with this." Since the day we got married, I had been the perfect wife, loyal, patient, always putting David and our son first. But now, as he saw me unravel in front of everyone, he seemed caught off guard. He turned away, fumbling for his phone, and made a hurried call, his face tight with frustration. The neighbors, who had been quick to judge me just moments ago, hesitated. Doubt started creeping into their faces. "Wait a second. The kid's been lying there for ages. Where's the ambulance? Mary's always been a good mom. You've seen her with James. He's always clean, well-fed, and happy. What if David's the one up to something? Maybe he's been cheating, transferring money, and now he's framing her to get rid of them both. I live right next door. David's nothing but a loser. He only got where he was because of Mary's family. Now that her parents are gone, he's probably looking for a way to ditch her. David's face flushed with anger as the murmurs around him grew louder. For once, he didn't have a quick response. He just stood there, stunned, as the crowd's suspicion shifted toward him. In my previous life, after they shattered my legs, I dragged myself to the hospital, only to be told that our family account had just $1.68 left in it. David had drained every last bit of the $2 million I had saved before our marriage. I was about to speak again when a sharp pain shot through my back. I turned to see David's mother, Jennifer, her face twisted with rage as she loomed over me. Behind her, two burly men stood ready, the same men who had beaten me senseless in my past life. "You witch!" Jennifer screamed, her voice dripping with venom. "You took my grandson's life. You'll pay for this with your life." I forced myself to stay calm, my voice steady as I met her gaze. "You're accusing me of murdering James? Do you have any proof?" Jennifer's eyes darted around before she pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her bag, her lips curling into a smug smile. "This is James's note. It's all written here. How you abused him, how you brought your lover into the house and did unspeakable things right in front of him. You even threatened him not to tell his father. My poor, sweet grandson." I reached for the paper, but the two men blocked me, pushing me back. Memories of the beatings I endured in my past life flooded my mind, and despite myself, I flinched. Jennifer saw the fear in my eyes, and it only fueled her arrogance. "You took my grandson's life, and now you're going to pay. You're going to hand over your house to my son." I let out a cold laugh. "So that's what this is about. You want the house." The moment I mentioned the house, greed flashed in her eyes. While she was distracted, I snatched the letter from her hand. One glance was all I needed to know something was off. I held the letter up for everyone to see, raising my voice so the crowd could hear. "Look at this." My son was only in first grade. He could barely write his own name, let alone a letter like this. The neighbors leaned in, craning their necks to get a better look. Jennifer's smug expression faltered as skeptical whispers spread through the crowd. She hesitated and then tried to cover her tracks. "So what if he used a dictionary? You think kids can't look up words?" I smirked, turning toward a familiar face in the crowd. Karen, James's teacher, stood near the back, clearly uncomfortable with the unfolding scene. "Karen," I called out, my voice respectful but firm. "You've seen James's handwriting hundreds of times. Can you take a look at this and tell us if it's really his?" I had noticed Karen the moment Jennifer pulled out the letter. She lived in the same building and was fresh out of university, the kind of person who still believed in standing up for what was right. I knew she wouldn't shy away from the truth, especially in a situation like this. Sure enough, after a brief pause, Karen stepped forward. She took the letter from my hand and examined it closely, her brow furrowing as she studied the writing. After what felt like forever, she handed the letter back to me and looked up at the crowd. "This isn't James's handwriting." Jennifer let out a furious shriek, lunging toward Karen. "You liar! You must be in on this. That's my grandson's handwriting." But Karen didn't back down. She raised her voice, her tone sharp. "I swear on my career as a teacher, this letter was not written by James." She turned to the crowd and said loudly, "While you accuse this woman, her child's body is still lying there. Do you have any conscience? I've already called the police. They will arrive soon." Chapter 3. Karen gave me a subtle, reassuring nod after she finished speaking. Everything had happened so fast that I barely had time to think. I had run downstairs barefoot without my phone the moment I saw my son fall. Earlier, when I asked Karen to take a look at the so-called note, I had also quietly asked her to call the police. When David and Jennifer heard the word police, I saw the panic flicker in their eyes. Jennifer shot a quick glance at the two men standing nearby, and they immediately began to slip away toward the complex's front gate. I kept up my act as the devastated mother, clinging to James's little hand as if my world had just ended. No one noticed that when I pressed my nails into his skin, I felt the faintest twitch. He was starting to come around. Whatever drug they had used was wearing off. But the police still hadn't arrived, and instead, someone else pushed their way through the crowd. "Mary, how could you?" A man I didn't recognize stumbled forward, his face contorted in exaggerated grief. "How could you end your own son's life for me?" The crowd parted as he staggered toward me, his voice loud enough to make sure everyone heard him. His whole act was revolting. He grabbed my hand dramatically, his eyes welling up with fake tears. "You told me you wanted to have a child with me, but I never thought you'd go this far. How could you murder your own son?" I yanked my hand free and slapped him across the face. "Who the hell are you? I've never seen you before in my life." He clutched his cheek, putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. "I'm your Daniel. There's no need to hide it anymore, Mary. It's too late. Just confess when the police arrive. I'll wait for you to get out of prison." His words sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. People gasped, their eyes darting between us, trying to make sense of what they were hearing. David was on me in an instant, his face twisted with rage. He kicked me hard in the chest, sending me sprawling to the ground. "You witch! You and your lover took our son's life, didn't you?" Jennifer collapsed to the ground beside me, wailing as if on cue. "James! My poor James! How could you have such an evil mother?" A chill ran through me, from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. I finally understood. They'd realized they couldn't pin this on me directly, so they'd hired this man to stage a scene and frame me for murder. The neighbors, who had been wavering just moments ago, immediately turned against me again. Someone even threw an egg, splattering it across my shirt. Rotten vegetables soon followed. "You're a monster. How could you do this? I mean, he is your son. When are the police getting here? Lock her up already. I don't want to live near a murderer. I can't believe I felt sorry for her. She's disgusting. She should be shot." I stood tall, refusing to crumble under their hatred. I fixed my eyes on the man pretending to be my lover. "I've never met you before. How much did they pay you to do this?" His expression faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, pulling out his phone. "Here, see for yourself. These are videos of us. In bed." He played a clip, and the sound alone was enough to turn the crowd's disgust into outright contempt. The video was blurry, but it didn't matter. People were already convinced they knew the truth. David grabbed me by the collar, shaking me. "I work my ass off every day to give you and James a good life, and this is how you repay me? Sneaking around with some lowlife and making disgusting videos? You deserve to rot in hell." The video quality was terrible, but it didn't matter. The woman's face wasn't clear, but the man was unmistakably this Daniel-like character. Even if it wasn't me in the video, the damage was done. Everyone was ready to believe the worst. I took a deep breath, pushing David off me and turning to face Daniel with cold defiance. "First of all," I said, my voice steady, "how can you prove that the woman in that video is me? And second, even if you could prove it's me, you're the one guilty of distributing obscene material. You violated my privacy. You're the one who should be going to jail." Daniel's expression froze. He shot a nervous glance at David, clearly unsure of how to respond. David scowled, kicking Daniel in the shin. "What are you looking at me for? Stick to the story, or you'll be sharing a cell with her." Daniel straightened up, his voice trembling as he pointed a finger at me. "Mary and I have been together for 2 years. She's been talking about divorcing you for ages, but she didn't want to split the assets, so she stayed with you. I told her I didn't want to raise your kid, and she promised she'd deal with it. But I never thought she'd actually end his life. I had nothing to do with this. I'm just trying to tell the truth. Don't blame me for your son's end." The crowd was beyond furious now. I could hear angry shouts and people calling for my execution, comparing me to some kind of modern-day witch. I made a split-second decision. I wasn't going to let them drag me down. I scooped James up into my arms, and before anyone could react, I bolted for the elevator. The crowd was stunned into silence. No one moved to stop me. I made it to the rooftop, the wind whipping through my hair. The door behind me burst open, and David's voice echoed across the rooftop. "What the hell are you doing?" I let out a bitter laugh, the kind that comes when there's nothing left to lose. "You've already destroyed my life. What else is there? My son is gone, and I have nothing left to live for." If you want me gone so badly, fine. I'll take my son with me. We'll go together. I felt James stir in my arms, just a tiny movement. He was waking up, but I didn't let on. I took another step toward the edge, pretending I was ready to jump. David rushed forward, grabbing me by the arm, trying to pull James from my grasp. Jennifer and several others were right behind him, shouting for me to stop. They forced me to the ground, pinning me there as David finally pried James out of my arms. He let out a sigh of relief, thinking it was over. But I wasn't done yet. I bit down hard on Jennifer's hand, making her scream and stumble back. David tripped over her, losing his balance. At that moment, James slipped from his grasp and tumbled over the edge. His small voice echoed through the air as he fell. "Daddy, help me." Chapter 4. James. David's face turned beet red, veins bulging on his forehead as he stomped the ground in frustration, letting out a guttural scream that echoed through the air. Next to him, Jennifer collapsed in a fit of hysterics, flailing on the ground like a rabid dog. My baby. My precious grandson. But no one knew the truth. James had already woken up while he was still in my arms. He trembled when he heard me say we jumped together, but somehow he managed to stay silent. And when David snatched him from me, I saw it. James opened his eyes and smiled. The neighbors, caught off guard by the chaos, stood frozen. Then whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Did you hear that? Was that the kid talking? I swear I heard him. He was yelling for help. What the hell is going on? Could the kid still be alive?" David spun around, glaring at the crowd, his voice dripping with fury. "What the heck are you all talking about? You saw him lying there. He's gone. You saw it with your own eyes." He pointed an accusing finger at me, his voice rising in pitch. "You didn't just end our son's life. Now you're trying to defile his body. You're sick. You don't deserve to call yourself a mother." I broke down, burying my face in my hands and sobbing uncontrollably. "We all heard him, David," he said. "Daddy, save me. You knew he wasn't gone, but you still let him fall. How could you be so heartless?" The neighbors murmured in agreement, their voices louder now. "Yeah, we all heard him cry for help. Then you let him go." Another voice chimed in. "I saw it too. You dropped him." "Bullshit." David's face flushed with anger, and he jabbed his finger at two elderly women standing nearby. "It was them. They bumped into me. I almost fell. That's why I lost my grip." The two women, who had been helping Jennifer earlier, immediately snapped to attention, their faces full of righteous indignation. "You lying bastard," one of them spat. "We were trying to stop your wife from jumping. We were saving your son. And now you want to blame us." The other woman chimed in, her voice tinged with outrage. "I saw it all. You dropped the boy yourself. Don't you dare put this on us." David's temper flared. He lunged forward, grabbing one of the old women by the collar and shaking her violently. "You old hag. I'll end you." But the woman didn't flinch. She stood tall, staring him down. "Go ahead. Hit me. If you touch me, my 3 sons will make sure your whole family line ends with you." Realizing he was outmatched, David let her go, his hands trembling with frustration. Just then, a young man in the crowd, a local influencer holding his phone, exclaimed, "I've got it all on video." David dropped the kid. "It's all here." I stumbled toward him, barely able to stand, and fell to my knees at his feet. "Please, let me see. James is my son, my flesh and blood. I need to know the truth." The influencer quickly reached down to lift me up. "No need to beg, lady. I'll show you." A crowd gathered around as the video played. There, clear as day, was the moment David let go of James. The footage showed everything. The boy slipping from his father's grasp and falling. A cry of pure agony ripped from my throat, and I collapsed to the ground, shaking with sobs. "How could you? You're his father, David. How could you do this? You monster." But David wasn't ready to give up. Desperation clawed at him, his face twisted in fury. He turned on the influencer, his voice rabid. "You're in on this, aren't you? You're just another one of Mary's lovers. She paid you to fake that video, didn't she?" The young guy, barely in his 20s and full of adrenaline, wasn't having it. Without hesitation, he swung a fist at David's face, landing a solid punch. David staggered backward, clutching his nose, blood dripping onto his shirt. "Watch your mouth, you piece of shit," the young man growled. "You're just lashing out because you know you've lost. Keep talking, and I'll make sure you can't walk straight for the rest of your life." David, already weakened from years of excess and indulgence, was no match for the younger man. Within moments, he was crouched in the corner, his face swollen and bruised, too humiliated to say another word. Jennifer, seeing her son beaten and humiliated, rushed forward in a fit of rage. She flung herself at the young man, ready to claw his eyes out. But he barely had to move. He sidestepped her easily, and she stumbled to the ground with a loud thud. Desperate, Jennifer scrambled to her feet and ran toward the edge of the rooftop, her voice rising into a shriek. "You monster! You took my grandson's life and had your lover beat up my son. Now you want me gone, too? Fine. James, don't worry. Grandma's coming to join you." But by now, the crowd had grown tired of the drama. No one moved to stop her. They just watched, their expressions a mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity. And then, from the edge of the rooftop, a faint voice called out, "Help me. It hurts. So much." Chapter 5. The moment I heard that faint cry, I bolted toward the rooftop, stumbling over my own feet in my frantic rush. When I reached the edge, my heart nearly stopped. There was James alive, lying helplessly on a neighbor's terrace. He wasn't moving much, but he was breathing. As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air. The paramedics and police had arrived. Once they hoisted James back to safety, I collapsed beside him, tears streaming down my face. I could barely breathe through the sobs. "My baby, I almost lost you forever." But when our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't expected. Pain, yes, but also confusion. His little voice, barely above a whisper, cut through my tears. "Why are you still my mom?" That single question froze everyone in place. The air seemed to disappear from the rooftop. David's face went white as he lunged forward, desperate to silence James, but it was too late. James's voice was weak but clear. "Daddy told me that if I went to sleep, I'd wake up with a new mommy." His tiny body shook as he began to cry. "But why does it hurt so much? Am I going to pass away? I want to live." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone from the back shouted, "Wait, didn't they say the kid left a note? He clearly doesn't want to pass away. What the hell is going on here?" Another voice piped up, dripping with scorn. "I knew it. That bastard David's been fooling around, hasn't he? He's trying to ruin his wife, and now he's using his son to do it. What kind of twisted person does that? And remember what Mary said earlier? How was all her money transferred? This whole thing was planned. And come to think of it, did any of us actually see the boy jump? By the time we looked, he was already lying in the bushes." The crowd erupted into a frenzy, voices overlapping in disbelief. But in the middle of all that chaos, I stood quietly, a small, satisfied smile tugging at my lips. "You see, our building has only one terrace, and it belongs to the penthouse. I didn't choose the spot to jump by accident. I picked the perfect place. A fall that wouldn't end James's life but would ensure his life would never be the same again." Looking at him now and judging by the grim faces of the doctors, I'd say my plan worked. James wouldn't die, but he'd likely spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. No matter how cruel and cold he had become, James was still just a child shaped by the adults around him. He couldn't have reached this level of malice on his own. In this second chance at life, I had no desire to become a murderer. But that didn't mean I would let any of them walk away unpunished. Not a single one. I wiped the tears from my face, stood up, and without warning slapped David as hard as I could. The sound echoed across the rooftop. "You faked our son's end just to frame me? You're a monster." David stumbled back, utterly shocked. He hadn't expected the truth to unravel like this, especially not in front of so many people. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Jennifer, seeing her son cornered, rushed toward me like a wild animal, her hands clawed and ready to strike. But before she could reach me, two figures in black stepped in front of her, blocking her way. "Who the hell are these guys?" she shrieked. "You whore! You brought more of your boyfriends to help you." One of the men spoke, his voice calm but firm. "We're police officers. I'd be careful with that mouth of yours. Slandering a cop comes with consequences you might not like. Jennifer's face transformed instantly from rage to sycophantic sweetness. Oh, officers! This woman! She jumped from the roof with my grandson. Arrest her! She's dangerous. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You crazy old bat. I helped you try to save him, and now you're trying to twist this around? What kind of mother-in-law tries to destroy her own daughter-in-law like this? From the crowd, Elizabeth, the neighbor who always had something to say, stepped forward, her voice brimming with indignation. I saw everything. Mary's telling the truth. I can't believe you'd stoop this low, Jennifer. Her words sparked a chain reaction. Suddenly, the crowd turned in my favor, their voices rising in unison. We'll vouch for Mary. She's innocent. Tears welled up in my eyes again, but this time they weren't from sadness. I turned to face the crowd, bowing deeply. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. I don't care what happens to me, but as a mother, I can't stand by and let my son be hurt. My voice caught as I continued. If I could, I'd trade my life to make sure James grows up healthy and happy. David, seeing the crowd had completely turned against him, made one last desperate attempt to twist the narrative. Kids don't lie. James, tell everyone. Didn't you see your mother with another man? Didn't she betray me right in front of you? James, lying weak and feverish on the stretcher, hesitated. He glanced at David, clearly terrified. His voice was barely audible, but we all heard it. Yes, I saw a man take off Mommy's clothes. Even though I had long since given up on David and James, hearing those words from James still felt like a knife to the heart. My own child accusing me of something so vile. But I wasn't worried. Soon the tables would turn. The crowd grew larger, buzzing with gossip and anger. The police began to disperse them, ushering us toward the waiting ambulance. We were on our way to the hospital. While waiting outside the emergency room, I spotted a familiar face. A young nurse approached David, speaking softly, but the way their eyes lingered on each other told me everything I needed to know. It was her Linda, David's mistress. No wonder they had come up with this twisted plan to fake James's accident. Linda worked at the hospital, which made it easy for her to get access to the drugs. Sedating a child was child's play for someone in her position. My eyes drifted downward, and there it was, a small but unmistakable bump. Linda was pregnant. So that's why they were in such a rush to get rid of me. David was going to have another child with her. The memory of how Linda had set her dogs on me in my previous life, how they had ripped me apart, still burned fresh in my mind. For a moment, all I wanted was to storm over and end them, both of them, right then and there. But I held back. I had to be smarter this time. I wasn't just looking for revenge. I had a whole life ahead of me, and I intended to live it in peace. Chapter 6. One night, after drinking milk Wang Qing brought, I complained of dizziness and fever. She felt my forehead, exclaiming, "You're burning up." I loosened my collar, my voice thick with false drowsiness. My head, so dizzy, so hot. She leaned in, grinning. "Sister, soon someone will make you feel better." Humming a tune, she left the room, whispering to someone outside, "Get moving. You'll be well compensated." Shortly after, a shadow approached. A foul odor of sweat and body odor filled the air. In the dark, a lecherous voice spoke. "You should be grateful I'm doing this." It was Huangda. His sticky hand touched my cheek, his breath heavy. As his hand moved to my collar, the room's light suddenly turned on. I pulled out a pepper spray from under my pillow and sprayed it in his face. His screams echoed as the night duty doctors, nurses, and patients rushed in. Li Chun burst through the door, pointing at me. "Wretch! Cheating even in the hospital. I want a divorce. You won't get a cent." As doctors called security to apprehend Huangda, he broke free, shouting, "Qin Zhao invited me here. She wanted to do it in the hospital. I'm the victim." Confused onlookers looked at me with contempt. Seeing my silence, Li Chun produced a prepared divorce agreement. "Sign it. You'll leave with nothing." I picked up the agreement and laughed, then tore it into pieces, throwing them in his face. "The one who will leave with nothing is you." The bathroom door creaked open. A female officer, stern-faced, approached Huangda, handcuffing him without a word. "You're under arrest for attempted assault." Huangda screamed, "I told you I'm innocent. Qin Zhao seduced me." The officer remained unmoved, leading him away. Huang De pointed at Wang Qing, shouting, "She instructed me. She paid me to do this." Wang Qing paled. "You're lying. I would never do such a thing. Don't drag me into this." Huang De, nearly collapsing, continued, "I swear on my life, she not only instructed me to ruin Qin Zhao but also to pose as her lover." Wang Qing, clutching her stomach, tried to attack him but was stopped by the police. He continued, "Check my phone. It has our chats and transfer records." The police examined his phone, frowning deeper. I held up the milk cup. "Officers, please test this for drugs. Poisoning by a nurse is a serious crime." Wang Qing, panicked, shouted, "You shouldn't be fine. This was supposed to be the strongest." Realizing her slip, she covered her mouth. But it was too late. I revealed a towel from under the blanket, soaked and spat out milk. The female officer had been part of my plan, hiding in the bathroom. Li Chun and Wang Qing's foolishness had led them to discuss their plans in the stairwell, overheard by me. Since Wang Qing began caring for me, I had secretly disposed of everything she brought, anticipating such a scenario. The milk test results came back quickly. The police handcuffed Wang Qing. "You're under arrest for administering illegal substances." Chapter 7. Huang De, trembling as he was taken away, clutched the officer's hand. "How long will I be in jail?" The officer smirked. "It depends. Severe cases can get over 10 years or life. I have information. Can my sentence be reduced?" Huang De tearfully recounted how Wang Qing and Li Chun had found him, paid him, and instructed him to pose as my lover. He even produced a secretly recorded video of their conspiracy, including Wang Qing's theft of hospital anesthesia for Jun's fake death. With the truth exposed, Li Chun tried to flee, but I blocked him. "What's wrong? Can't face it?" He awkwardly smiled. "It's all a misunderstanding." Then he pointed at Wang Qing. "It's all her. She seduced me and incited me and our son against you. She wanted our family assets. She drugged and slept with me, then claimed to be pregnant. You know I love you and our son. Seeing her pregnant, I thought of you and felt pity. Give me another chance. I'll make it up to you." Wang Qing, pale and in pain, knelt, blood seeping from her pants. She screamed, "Li Chun, you said you loved me. Now you're blaming me? I'm carrying your child and you shift all the blame? Are you even a man?" Li Chun, unmoved by the blood, coldly replied, "Maybe it's someone else's child." "Li Chun, I'll kill you." Wang Qing lunged, handcuffs cutting into Li Chun's head. The drama ended with Wang Qing's miscarriage and coma, and Li Chun and Huang De both arrested. Gui Lu, rushing in after being hit by June, saw her son being taken away. She tried to attack me but missed. "Wretched woman, you've ruined us," I sneered, walking towards the police car. "Officer, there's another accomplice here." Li Chun, Wang Qing, Gui Lu, and Huang De were all sentenced. June, bedridden, heard snippets from other patients. "Mom, you love me most, right? You won't leave me." "Mom, I was wrong. I shouldn't have pretended to die." "Mom, take me home. I don't want to stay in the hospital." "Mom, I miss your stories and cooking." I patted his head, smiling. "Some people won't have a mother anymore." I drove to the sea, leaving a farewell note. If they faked death to ruin me, I could disappear too. As June cried for help in the hospital, I boarded a plane across the ocean. June was sent to an orphanage while I settled abroad, living in a house with a big garden. Li Chun, released from prison with broken legs, begged on the streets. Wang Qing, infertile after her miscarriage, went mad, scavenging with Li Chun. Gui Lu, blind from crying in prison, was beaten to death after trying to scam someone. Huang De, tortured in prison, was institutionalized for his aggression. Years later, I returned with my husband and daughter. A beggar grabbed my skirt. He said, "You're alive? My wife, you're alive." I smiled disdainfully. "Playing a beggar now? Honey, give him the dog's leftovers." The beggar took the food, dazed. "Oh right, little pudding is our dog."